This episode of Bonfireside Chat is brought to you by our patrons at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Please join us there for fun, frolic, frisbees.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is a inverted favorite.
And this week we are beginning our discussion of Shadow Tower, which is a first-person action RPG developed by From Software and published by Agetec for the PlayStation in 1999.
Yes. And this is a successor to and very similar to Kingsfield, which we played the most recent Kingsfield game in one of our last off seasons, but this is a little bit different, primarily because it adds in this horror element to things that we tend to associate. Like, so Kingsfield is really kind of classic swords and sorcery. You're playing a Kingsfield game, you might get scared because it's super immersive and the draw distance is bad. And that's not me making fun of it. Like, that's great.
Yeah.
But this game leans into that and uses it to effect more strongly.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And this is more of a dungeon crawler too, whereas Kingsfield, there are a lot of hallways in Kingsfield, but because this is taking place in this dungeon, right? Like in this, it's all hallways and rooms as you're descending the titular Shadow Tower. It's a much more claustrophobic kind of feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it has that, a little bit of that Silent Hill, like I'm just going down, going down, going down, going down. And that always has kind of a psychological toll on you. Your goal here in the game, and there are kind of some lore reasons behind some of this stuff, but we're going to talk about it in terms of gaminess because there's not as much as we're used to, obviously. But the goal is, you kill the boss on each floor, and these floors are called worlds for some reason. And then you descend to the void at the bottom of this and kill the demon, who is actually responsible for the sorry condition of the world at the very bottom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is there's an evil place and only a true hero can go solve it.
It's there's a little bit like, that's the case, but it's got these weird little nods in what you're doing that are really cool and like specifically pretty soulsy. I didn't realize this when I was playing it because I played it on my PSP or on my Vita, but I bought this for PlayStation at a Portland Retro Gaming Expo a couple of years back. So I had it and had the manual and read through it and stuff with the actual thing. It's pretty fun. And one of my favorite details is, the reason why we're doing this is to free all these people's souls. They've been stolen by demons, which is familiar. But two, you were distracted going to your grandma's house.
Yep, you're going to Granny.
So good.
That's the only name that she's given.
That's so good. Like, you're just heading to grandma's house and it's like, gotta do this.
It's like you got a flat tire, like on the way to Thanksgiving. Like, no.
Well, I'll stop by at the Plaid Pantry on the way to Grandma's, and then Plaid Pantry is a multi-level dungeon that goes deep into the earth, and you need to get them fucking red vines.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's definitely it articulates in some nuanced ways, but it doesn't really come out an awful lot in the actual play.
I guess that's what I was getting at. That's what we're going to focus on is the gaminess, because as the lore stuff's there, but we're really it's the straw at the bottom of the soda. Like, it is we're trying to find that stuff, and there's not that much. So mostly we're going to be talking about these hallways, spend a lot of time in, and these very boxy rooms.
Yeah.
And Yeah.
Yeah, and what's cool about this, and something that I don't really remember from the little bit of Kingsfield that I played, Gary, you can confirm, is that light is it's really important here. Like the title is meaningful as you're kind of trying to find ways to light up rooms with torches or with items and things like that. That can give you a little bit of an advantage as you are trying to make do with these limited resources in a survival horror kind of way.
Yeah, it's way darker than Kingsfield is, and it uses the technological limitations, I think, really well.
Yeah.
So darkness and draw distance are used to really great effect here, and that also is just leaning into the survival horror. Like we said, it's a horror game, but it's also got a lot of survival horror elements, which is really interesting to see. Kind of like one, to see any take on survival horror that isn't patterned after Resident Evil, like explicitly or implicitly, like that happened. Even games that are very different. Pretty much have the Resident Evil mold, This is a real different kind of take on those problems of resource scarcity, and stuff. So it's interesting to see.
Yeah, like this is, we're going to get to this when we talk about the equipment, but this is a game about privation.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. And on the flip side of that, it's a game about being thrifty and being deprived in the early game, and then that just turning into, like, this ended up being really weirdly one of my favorite kind of empowerment games that I played in a long time, because like you start off so shit on and you end so awesome.
Yeah, the way that I describe it, it's like a slingshot almost. You get this in a lot of From's games that we've covered, where it's slow going at the beginning, but like you are struggling against the tension of this system that is set up here, only to feel like you're moving backwards until there's some critical point in one of these worlds, and it'll be different depending on who you are, that just propels you straight to the end. Like once I got past like Fire World and let's say Water as well, like the back half of the game just flew.
Yeah, you just do great. Like you have the systems, you have the resources and stuff, and you just like this amazing feeling to me. And then this will come out when we talk about this stuff. But I really love this game. This really amazing feeling of mastery of this thing that was so hostile and strange. And it just like, and that was the Dark Souls tie, right? Like you never get that powerful in Dark Souls. Like Dark Souls ramps up challenges more elegantly.
Yeah.
So it's always hard. But this was just like that same kind of like, it was a cousin feeling to that, like I can get through the Berg in 2 minutes feeling. Like it's just like, oh, I fucking own this. Like this is me. Nothing that this game is going to do now is going to actually destroy me. Even though I restarted like 10 times in the beginning from dying in like the first 2 rooms.
New game.
Yeah, new, like just constantly, because you just die and it's like, oh, I used too many potions. Like I can't do, like I'm not going to make it. And then eventually just having this like just amazing feeling of mastery, like really works for me, and that is a FromSoft kind of touch, and I love it here too.
Yeah. Make no mistake though, this is challenging cuisine.
Yes.
It is very much of its era, and a lot of our fans, when we announce this, they try to go along and they're like, I'm out because of the and I don't blame them. Because that first hump feels so insurmountable, and like this is of its era. It's late in the era. In fact, they stuck with this scheme much longer than they should have. But even just moving around is like on the regular control scheme, it's just like very, very clunky and unintuitive. Like I'm talking, no game uses the shoulder buttons as much as this one does, and it really benefits from being on a Vita. Because you're able to map it around like serendipitously to this twin stick shooter kind of feel.
Yeah, like the way to play this is either on a Vita or on an emulator where you can remap the controls. And if you do that, it becomes kind of like just a slow first-person dual stick action game.
Yeah.
Before that, what it feels like, the clunkiness that it feels like reminded me of like Ultima Underworld.
Yeah.
Right, like it had like it's a PC game interface mapped onto a controller. So like you have these little things like R2 being looked down, which is egregious, and you have to look down constantly. It's not for like navigation,
right? And it's not for just like looking at the scenery either,
right? And if that were the case, like fine, but it's enemies that are low, you have to look down to hit. Enemies that are high, you have to look up to hit, and without being able to kind of move and do those things elegantly at the same time, it's really hard to take advantage of your defensive options in this game, which tend to be kind of, like manually dodging. Right. Like, and so it just felt like it felt the same way when I played those very, very early kind of PC 3D games.
Yeah.
Even though this came out way later than that. Like if this was a PC game, yeah, if this came out as a PC game, like it would have mouse looking, it would be great. But the fact that, like it's a PlayStation game means that they had to come up with this workaround that like, that you have to work around yourself. And like a lot of the love that I have for this game, if I had to stick with that original control scheme or play it on PlayStation, I don't know if I would have ever got used to it.
Yeah, it would be a game that you would have to play with your index and middle finger just constantly on there. Like, and eventually you could probably remap those neurons and learn the muscle memory required to do the dancing that like some of the harder bosses downright require you to do. Yeah. Specifically with strafing, right? And, and aiming spells and stuff like that. Like you could get these results, but I think that when the option is available, I don't think that compromises the intended design of the game. All it does is make it easier to do what they really wanted you to be able to do.
I think that's true. Like I don't hold it against the game. I just mean like I would have had a worse experience. And I think that at this point, like hiding kind of a shitty experience behind a bad control scheme like this, like like you can play Doom with mouse look if you want to, like that's like a thing. So I think it is A-okay and recommended. There are other elements to it that are also, weirdly hostile, because it's you can like track the progress of the From Software games in speed of combat from like the early Kingsfield games to Bloodborne.
Yeah.
And this is so slow. Yeah. Right. Like it's familiar. It's the same basic principles, right? Like the defining FromSoft combat feature is how important stamina is, and that hasn't gone anywhere, but it's so much slower. Like everything moves slower, and to compensate for that, like you don't have the dodge roll or anything. You just have to be able to actually physically move your avatar out of the way, right? While managing the stamina meter. That again, it doesn't work exactly like the Dark Souls Demon Souls one, but it's the same basic principle.
Yeah, it is closest to the Kingsfield 4 one, which if you're going into this and you don't know what that rapidly growing meter does, and you're just like attack. If you're treating this like Diablo, you're going to be doing 0 damage and you're going to die to the first slime.
Well, and your sword's going to die.
Right.
Like you cannot wasting attacks in this game is really, really not to be done. Like it is something to avoid because of we'll talk about when we talk about equipment, but. Yeah, and I ended up really liking this system. Like, I like stamina systems in games too. Like, just in general.
Yep, and also, like you're managing range. Like you're watching these animations and kind of doing the dip in, dip out kind of thing. Like it's you can feel kind of the house style developing in the rhythm and the rhythm that is kind of mandated by the systems.
Yep. Whereas the rhythm is more about dipping in and dipping out rather than shields, because unlike Kingsfield 4 where you played where the shield is just a defensive bonus, here you can actually raise the shield like a first person Dark Souls.
Yep.
But one, you actually raise it in front of your face, which like
realistically,
realistic, but it makes it kind of unusable. And two, like no shields provide 100% like physical reduction, and unless you spec for it, the animation of raising and lowering your shield will take too much time, for you to make it really feasible to trade blows.
Yeah, like
with characters.
No enemy telegraphs enough for you to be able to like see that they're going to attack and hold it up.
I think, I could do that. I just couldn't get it down in time to do a counterattack.
Right.
And I would still take damage, so it ended up not being really worth it.
Yeah,
they're really useful for some situations.
Yeah, like for ambient kind of damage, either through AOE's or certain traps that fire things at you. Like you always want to have one of these kind of equipped. In fact, you always want to have 2 of them, one on your arm and one on your back, because they turn into rings.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can also attack. So you have your melee options here with a variety of weapons that'll have different kind of swing arcs and stuff, similar to a Souls. And you also have magic spells in this game.
And here's a tip, because the game does not communicate this very well, if at all. You do have magic. You can get it relatively early on, like in the first real world, like after the tutorial. But you have to equip a ring. Which, is kind of a quest item in the early game, and then also equip the spell. So different rings can have different spell effects, and as you get kind of different masteries of rings from different elements, you get access to different spells, but you have to, do kind of this rain dance around holding the button and then also pressing another button to get them to fire.
Well, you can. It's not a. You don't have to have the button held and then press the next button, which I thought. You can tap them in quick succession.
Oh, neat.
Which makes it a lot quicker. So if you just tap circle, triangle, or circle, square real quick, you'll do.
Yeah. Well, I mapped my attacks to the shoulder buttons on the Vita. So
yeah, no. So did I. I kept them mapped on the face pad though for spells.
Oh wow.
So like I mapped them to the shoulder buttons, but then would use the face buttons just for magic.
Okay.
And it worked pretty well. But yeah, so the your rings will show up and they're mandatory.
Oh god.
Like you don't when I said you can do different kind of builds, like you more or less you are balancing out to a jack of all trades no matter what in this game.
Just because you can't afford to be picky.
Absolutely, yeah. The resources are too scarce and the world is too hostile to not use everything at your advantage. Like you have to shake off too good to use syndrome pretty quickly.
Yeah.
In this game, that's not really a thing.
And also, your build is so dependent on what you're wearing. Like, there's no minimum requirement to put anything on, and the bonuses that you get from a lot of stats are roughly equivalent to what your regular stats would be, depending on where you get that piece of equipment.
There's no reason not to be wearing the best armor you can wear for its weight.
Right, until it breaks, and then you have to put on the next best, and then the next best.
And so don't let things break. So that is the number one thing that I wish I had, and the game actually does tell you this at some point. I think I read it in the manual, but this is the number one thing I wish I had done differently in my early game is just don't let things break, no matter what, because it's so expensive to fix things once they've broken. And so compared to so you will end up going through the game has like a finite amount of health potions, it feels like.
Yeah, eventually the merchant stopped selling them too.
Yeah, and I definitely bought him out. You have a finite amount of health potions and a finite amount of enemies that can drop them. So eventually you can just run out of ways to heal. And that you're going to use a much smaller percentage of that resource, and we'll talk about how those are interconnected in a second. Yeah. If you let things break.
Right.
I did it. I shouldn't have usually, but eventually it just happened on accident or when I was truly desperate and needed that last squeeze of a spell to get through an area.
Yeah. Oh, and rings deteriorate as you cast too. So
everything deteriorates.
Yep. Everything turns to dust.
Yes.
You're like, you're a rust monster. You never see your actual character until the very end, but he's actually a bug.
Yeah. It's funny because this was supposed to be, you're given like when you first go in a magic sword and like, I have to think, to be kind to the game, I think it is just the corrupting elements of the Shadow Tower. Is the evil corrupting elephant? Yeah. I'll never forget to destroy your sword. But I like to think that it's just the evil of this place that does it.
Yeah. Yeah, so it gets a little bit hard to manage too because you can't really predict where enemies are going to be. There's, there are patterns, right? But they're kind of like almost like sets of enemies that can spawn in. And so the difficulty of an area is not only somewhat random, but as you kill enemies, they're replaced with new ones. And so what's kind of funny about it is like there is a completion percentage, and also certain enemies will only spawn if you kill all the rest of them, and those enemies will drop game-breaking equipment.
You know what it reminds me of, and this is a weird comparison, is it's like doing the genocide run in Undertale.
Oh yeah,
where like you just have to walk around doing random encounters until everything is gone from the area.
Yeah.
Which I don't recommend anyone do in Undertale, and I don't recommend anybody do in here. Like I cleared out the first couple of floors because I needed the strength.
Yeah.
But eventually, once I was strong enough, I didn't, because people do this, they want to collect. Like you can access a stat screen that show what percentage of items you've received and everything. So people try to get 100% completion in this game,
right.
But not me. But yeah, that's how you do it. And what that means is like when you go into a room, it's really a toss up if it's going to be like the hardest room in the game or not. And I'm glad that's something that From totally ditched.
Yeah.
Because that kind of chess like, planning your approach thing is something I love in Souls and is not the case here. But it did mean I managed to get past some really hard areas that I was maybe under leveled for in a good way. Like I got there and then was able to begin some experience with some easier things because the difficulty wall in this game is by no means, or the difficulty is by no means like a slope. You can fight a really, really hard room and get to a room after it, which has really comparatively easy enemies.
Right.
Pretty regularly.
Yeah. There are a lot of stats to manage, but there are really only 3 that you need to actively build. And yeah, it's kind of funny. Somebody wrote in the appendix for this saying, yes, it's amazing that this is just something that From does.
Yeah.
which is completely obfuscate what you're putting points into.
This is out of all of them, this feels like the worst.
Yep.
About that. It's kind of amazing. Like what the stats mean, because the names just feel like random joke stats.
Balance.
Yeah. So balance is poise. So you just have to know that, right? Like, and there's nothing really, like, I read the manual, I looked online to find what these things were, and eventually found a forum that explained it. But it's not presented by the game really in any way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and fortunately, like, you don't have to actively decide which of these you're going to put in. There are items you can consume, these soul pods. But really, you just want to put those into your physical stats. Like strength is above all else. Like strength and speed. With
because strength also determines your HP.
Yes.
And which also determines your equipment burden.
Yeah, but this is like progression is handled through action, right? It's Lamarckian evolution. It's Morrowind. Everything you do raises a stat.
It is, but it's a weird twist on that, because the in Morrowind, swinging a sword makes you better at swinging a sword. In Shadow Tower, as near as I can tell, enemies just have stats associated with them. And when you kill that enemy by any means, they raise that stat. So there's an enemy that's a sword enemy. You kill him with a bow, you get better at swinging a sword.
Right.
Or you kill him with magic or what have you. So you're still getting better at doing things by doing things, but it's a really weird approach to it.
Yeah.
Again, there's nothing on the, there's a bestiary, a really extensive bestiary I didn't spend very much time with.
Oh, I love that thing.
It's really great. And that kind of tells you what stat an enemy is associated with, if I recall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the grand effect is you really don't have a lot of control over how you grow.
Exactly.
And
you're just going to get better.
Right. And it does, and to an extent, like aside from strength and stuff, it doesn't matter again because of that equipment boost that you get to those stats, right?
Yeah.
You're always getting new equipment, and that's important because, as we've alluded to several times, it's made of paper.
Yeah, it's made of paper, and it's the number one thing you're managing in this game. It's the reason why it's a survival horror game. Is if you think of every sword you have as a gun with limited ammo, and you just have to refill it at these specific stations, like, it kind of works. Like, one of the things about this game is that, like, save points aren't really bonfires, repair shops are, because that's how you're going to get replenished. Right. Is through being able to heal your equipment back up. To do that. When you talk about, real quick on the level up thing, it's not as incremental as Morrowind is. Like, there are enemies near, like, the mid-late game where, like, I would kill the enemy and gain 200 hit points after killing them. Like, you can start a room and end up appreciably stronger by the end of it. Yep. If it's the right kind of enemy. So it's satisfying in a way that those other kind of, like, real micro increases or increasement, micro increasing
micro improvements,
improvements aren't usually for me.
Right.
And this one they are, because sometimes it's huge.
And the important distinction from Morrowind and Oblivion is that it's impossible to level up the wrong way.
Yes, exactly. Like, you're not, there's no curve to it. It's not like it takes more enemies to level up the further you get into it. It is just, this enemy is worth this much. Equipment. So the equipment determines your stats, as we mentioned. One of the things that's interesting is when an item is about to break, you get a little shield with an X next to it on the side of the screen. And that just shows that it's in danger. It has 3 uses left or less. The way you repair equipment are these little dwarfs who are in shops. We'll talk about shops, who trade you use your HP to do it. Like, they suck out your life to heal your stuff, down to the degree where, like, if you come and you're really wounded, they say you're in no shape to do this. Like, you're too much of a mess to even do this. Like, I can't do this without killing you. So in this weird way, health potions end up becoming repair potions as well. Yeah. And
that's important because every health potion cures you 100%. So yes. It's a regular dance that you do to just heal yourself down to the brink of death, and then repair yourself down to the brink of death, and then heal up so you can start again.
Yes, and a little pro tip there is once you've done so, repair your highest HP increasing equipment, because then you'll get more bang for your buck when you take your potion. So you'll be able to repair more after that. So repair all your high HP stuff first, because weirdly, like, you need HP to wear things, but then you also, get HP from items as well. As far as I can tell, that's kind of the function of armor.
So it's kind of funny how Souls turns experience into money, and this has turned health into money.
Yeah.
Because like there is currency. There are these things called cunes.
Yes.
But really, like they are just a token currency that you pick up one of these rocks and then you hand it to a snake lady and she gives you a health potion, and that is real money.
And they are pretty rare.
Yeah,
like cunes. Like the most expensive thing that you can buy with cunes, I think, is like 17 cunes. And you usually find them just with one of them at a time.
Right.
Yeah, and similar to Souls, this is just a minor thing, but like, don't buy weapons. You'll find better stuff.
Right. It's a trick.
It is. It's totally a trick. Like, it looks cool to get the keenest broadsword because, like, gee golly. But it is definitely a trap to steal your cunes. As far as I'm concerned, you should just spend cunes on the one mandatory item and then health potions.
Right. And then still like status healing stuff.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
And Doritos ashes. The Dorito dust at the bottom of a bag they use to repair your stuff, which barely helps. But again, you can't afford to throw away any incremental advantage in the first half. So like that Doritos ashes, you throw that on your ring, you get 3 more casts. That could mean, beating a boss or not.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, it's very much a last ditch kind of thing. But it repairs everything, so it's best to use when you're the most desperate.
Yes, and multiple pieces of your equipment are desperate. It repairs everything you're wearing. This ended up like this worked for me. Like this weird intersection of health and equipment and enemies and exploration, I think is really elegant in a weird way. Once you figure it out, elegant, like it's like elegant. Maybe that's not right. It stands up. Right. Like it's like a rickety tower that like is made up of 4 different things you wouldn't expect. It's like a raider base in Fallout, but it's like, it's secure. Like after I came to really appreciate it, like once I figured out this rhythm of like all these things are interconnected in a way I don't see in games.
Right. And it's just different enough from what I've seen while still being similar to like make me really pause and appreciate it.
Yeah.
I can't just like plug into this and say like, oh, I know this. And kind of go for it. And you're right, it is such a closed loop in a lot of ways. And
it just makes you think about I made considerations in this game I'm not used to making. Like this idea of like, I need to maybe if I spend a lot of my health to fix this sword, I might be able to make a little bit of inroad into this one path that has really strong enemies. They'll probably increase my stats, so when I come to this other area I'll be better. But that's going to require take my health, so I need to be really careful. Like all these kind of different risk reward situations it sets up on this micro level that I think really work.
Kind of the flip side of this, where somebody's mileage might vary, is that there's a lot more kind of menu management in this game than there are in other kind of games we've spoken about here. And it's a PS1 era interface, so it's not the greatest or the most elegant. There were times which is kind of like, oh man, I've got to go in and figure out which one of these things I need to equip. It's almost like there's a little bit too much information. It ultimately didn't detract from me. Like I'm happy the system exists as it did, just because it is so cool. But that also, I can see that being something somebody would bounce off of. Totally.
Like it's clunky. Like you have to spend a lot of time in menus, and like one of the more joyous things that can happen in this game, and another thing that we didn't mention that is a way that these systems interplay with each other, is that the only way that you can sell things is you can trade them for 1 health potion. So once you can get to the point where you're comfortable decluttering your inventory, that's a great feeling. Like I have mastered this enough to where like I don't need to hold on to weapons I don't like. And you can roll into the end game with like 5 weapons you really like. As opposed to 20 that you don't.
Because you're sacrificing those ones that you don't in order to make the ones you like better and to keep them in fighting condition longer.
And keep yourself in fighting condition longer. So like decluttering and making that easier. And they kind of have some nods to it. Like you can equip a backup weapon on each arm.
Again, they're rings.
So, yeah, exactly. Like they become rings. But you can switch to them so you can, not have to go into the menu, but it doesn't help with like you actually using items at all. But this, one of the things, so we talked about the systems a lot, and we'll talk about that more as it pops up. But one of the big reasons why this game has kind of a cult following, and a thing it has in common with Souls, is this atmosphere. And this atmosphere is carried over almost entirely through its aesthetics.
Right. Yep. So we talked about how scary it is, how dark it is, and kind of this the sense of claustrophobia just by the structure where you're going down and you can kind of feel the weight of the world above you, right? Something that got mixed reviews when this came out and was a little bit off-putting if I wasn't just listening to podcasts the entire time I was playing, was the fact that there is no music in this game. And there are only attack sounds because people complained about Kingsfield.
And because the attacks in Kingsfield, it's very hard to know when you're hitting something when you successfully landed a hit. The no music thing ended up working for me, primarily in the kind of darker, scarier areas. It made it darker and scarier for me. There's a level later that we'll be talking about next episode that is supposed to be the kind of payoff for this, where you actually need sound. In a way. But hearing the enemies make really weird sounds, and just hearing those off in the distance was like genuinely creepy for me.
Yes.
In a way that it wouldn't be if there was a soundtrack on top of it. That said, like during parts where I was like going back and killing enemies to level up and stuff, I just threw on the Ancient City soundtrack, which like works really well for it.
I was gonna say, like, how awesome would it be if there was just another Ancient City soundtrack we could have? Like, it wouldn't fit the tone of this at all, but
I wonder if it's the same person, because the actual one piece of title music for this that we'll probably have to use for both episodes.
Well, there's there's the music from the opening cinematic and the one from the closing. Yep.
Yes. Well, I figured we put the closing one at the end, so we'll probably end up using both those pieces of music twice.
It'll be an easy but boring edit.
Yes. The music in the beginning kind of sounds like Ancient City music to me, and it's really, really good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So that is kind of a distinct choice. Oh, also, I remember what I was going to say about that. The enemy sounds help you locate hidden doors.
Yes.
Because you can hear skeleton bones rattling around back there.
Yeah, and that really worked for me too. Like it uses the silence to good effect, I think.
Yeah.
The other thing it uses to good effect is that these are like, I'm real close to saying favorite. I think as a set, this might be my favorite set of enemy designs in a Souls game. It's so good. Like, it's so fucking weird.
Yeah, like this borders on comedic. There are so many just goofy and evocative, like Monster Manual 1, like illustrations come to life kind of things just running around. You know, you got a couple of your standards. You got your skeletons and your reptiloid knights or whatever, but then you have like pitcher plants that jump around, you know.
Those are such the exception. Like the standard, like goblins, skeletons, like and ogres are the exception so much. When like, because why would you do that when you could do like, you know, like the laser
the laser plants?
Yeah, laser plants, or like those you mentioned the pitcher plants, because those things have an amazing sound effect when they jump. But like everything is just like, what if it's just the weirdest? Like you said, Cole said something really great on Slack. I'm not taking credit for this, but he said it's like, what if Dark Souls was just basilisks? Like, and that's pretty close. Like, even though I think the designs are even more outlandish than that.
Yeah,
you know, like it's that same level of just like, why, if we want to unsettle the player, we can't unsettle them with zombies,
right?
Like, let's really swing for the fences here.
And it's like they know the limitations of the tech. Like, they know, you know, this is going to be relatively low poly kind of stuff, so we can't go for high detail. Like, what can we represent that is that still feels other? And they went cartoony.
Yeah, and it just with the silence and with how disempowered you are. Like, I've never been scared of like a goofy spring-loaded pitcher plant. You know, I'm scared of regular pitcher plants. But
just the way they stick to walls, yeah. Just in real life, like they're terrifying. Like, I just had, you know, wake up one day and one of them is growing on my wall and I didn't plant it there. You know, it's like, well, that's it. I'm suicide for me. And then I just slit my throat, and that's the end of me. That was the story of me. I woke up and because one of my roommates punked me with a pitcher plant. But it's weird what this game makes you scared of. That are not on paper scary, but are scary because of how incongruous they are. I would love to know what the design process was behind this. Like, I wish that there was a design work. I wish this wasn't just kind of like relegated to the dark corners of history. Yeah. Because like it feels like they just found somebody's sketchbook and like, here we go. Like, and some of them don't feel appropriate for the places where they're at, but like the fact that they stick out makes them fit in. It's like they designed the monsters first and like, okay, what's the world we can put around them?
Well, if you go back to like every season of Bonfireside Chat we've done, listen to us be effusive about goofy monster designs. Like every time a basilisk shows up, like every time like the new mimics in Dark Souls 2, like anything, or the Chaos Eaters and Lost Izalith, anytime something like that shows up, like we freak out because that shit is great. Like doing this wild imaginative things, because like monsters can be anything. Like they don't have to all be bipedal people who they used to be people. They can be anything. Like why not make them oh, I put a different animal's head on this human. Who gives a fuck, man? Like go crazy. and like that's what this does.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's funny is I went back and looked at this because so much of Shadow Tower has been, thrown into the memory hole. And, a website that I use for a lot of abject suffering research is Moby Games, which just has a complete database of who has worked on what games. And I was like, okay, well, let's see what the staff is. Here's something that I kind of knew about but like didn't really know until I confirmed it. Like they hold on to staff like crazy. Like people who were working for them in the mid 90s are like producers and project managers for them now. So this was produced by Shinichiro Nishida, who went on to produce Kingsfield 4, which would probably lend to some of the unified aesthetics there, and also was a project manager on Dark Souls 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, good work, Nishida. I like all those games.
so just a little bit there. Like it's got that Nishida touch.
Yes. Yeah. Everybody, when this game came out, everyone hated it.
Yep.
This would have been like Abject Suffering if we did Abject Suffering in 1990. Like people would have suggested it.
Yeah. So I grabbed some quotes from reviews just so we could look at, not to gloat, because like people bounced off of this. People still don't like this game very much, and I feel like we're doing a little bit of a service. God damn it, where's our parade? No, yeah. I'm happy we're able to go into this and that I got over the hump, so we can like come back and tell the tale.
Yeah.
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 So Gaming Age called it a piss poor effort that not even fans of the genre should check out.
Yeah, well, it's like, what even is the genre though? Like that is such a weird statement. Like this is not like if the genre is like Doom, like what is the genre for this? PlayStation Illustrated and all these things are not really things anymore. So what outlived you, PlayStation Illustrated? That's right, Shadow Tower.
If Einstein's so smart, why is he dead?
Yeah, exactly. You mean that I'm even better than the Great Caruso? Later, Daryl Strawberry. But yeah, PlayStation Illustrated called the graphics inexcusable. And PSX Nation said it would be quickly forgotten among the other releases in 1999, which is actually probably true.
Yeah. So it just strangely became available on PSN like in October or September or something like that. We got emails saying like, hey, you should totally do this. And yeah, like we mentioned before, this is the best way to play. The best way to play this is on the PS Vita, so you can do that remapping. I don't know how much I would encourage you to do this on a PS3 without that ability. Just recognize that you are signing yourself up for like a world of shit, because even in the best of conditions, we bounced off of it resisted our advances.
Yeah, Vita or emulator where you can remap the controls. Yes. Like still buy it on Vita, so you're not pirating it. But
yes.
And like I would love to like buy this on Vita so you can send a signal that like I want Kingsfield 1 and 2 on my Vita. Like I have those games in PlayStation 4, but I'd much rather play them on my portable system. I mean, the reason why it was released, it's mysterious, but it's also because Souls are huge.
Yep.
And this is, as we'll talk about, and as we already talked about, like there is a direct line. Like this is an influence to Demon Souls in a huge way.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the plot, Cole.
Well, long ago, a cataclysm befell the kingdom and continent of Eclipse. And all of this information is in the manual. Very little is in the actual game. But there was a great king who presided over this tower that was kind of at the crossroads of the nation. And he wore this horned crown that had a single eye on it, kind of this Sauron kind of thing. And one day, this eye opened, and it laid waste to the land around the tower.
Right, which immediately makes me think of a Bailet, which is that kind of thing. There's some other information around this as well from the manual and stuff. So I get that like there's these weird these things don't matter, right? And I was trying to like look up lore, and there's like one dude who did a couple of GameFAQs posts that are really good. But it's again, he never finished it.
Yeah.
And stuff. And I think that the world is called Eclipse rather than the continent. And there's this whole thing about there's like 7 kings and they have 7 towers they maintain. So this is one of the towers, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I know that there are 7 knights too that you get down here.
Yeah, seven. Well, and 1 leader. So there are 8 knights that went down, which is like in the most story-rich chapter in the game, which is like the first 2, where we end up fighting that first boss of the game in the Earth world. But like, there's 7 different kingdoms, 7 different towers, and everyone maintains them. Is the idea. And then this thing happened with this eye opening. This kingdom got rebuilt and forgotten, and these mercenaries started popping up. To serve this specific king. There's this kind of the strife in the kingdom, and we play as Ruus, Ruus. which, real quick, as a aside, I know we have a lot of recording to do today. Somebody was talking about Star Wars. Did you know that in Star Wars Extended Universe, Luke Skywalker has 2 clones, one of which is named Luke, and the other one is named Luke with 3 U's?
Yeah. Do you know about Big Luke?
No.
No, it's a fan theory that there are 2 Luke Skywalkers with 1 U, and one is just slightly higher, or slightly, one is just slightly on that dank nug. No, just slightly taller, and there are all kinds of there's a whole wiki with screenshots comparing his height to Harrison Ford's and Han Solo's, to determine which version of Luke is in which scenes.
That's fucking the worst.
I know.
Star Wars is so stupid. Like, I recognize people like it, but like, there's somebody out there who's taking that. Oh, there's Luke, and then there's Luke,
and there's Big Luke,
and Big Luke. That's so goddamn dumb. Like, that is so amazingly stupid. Like, there are people dedicating their lives to this world where there's Luke, and Luke.
Yeah,
It is the worst. And then Big Luke comes up from behind. Just like put aside all the other Lukes.
There are people dedicating their lives. Like, the Abyss Walker? I'm so, like that's the bottom of the ocean, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just heading that one off at the pass.
I know. It is the Abyss Walker is cool though. So it'd be like, if you imagine if like just to put it, because we dedicated our lives to Dark Souls, like what it like if there was Ornstein, but there's also Ornstein and Ornstein. Like, it's just like, who couldn't come up with a cooler name for clones than just adding an extra vowel?
We'd find a way.
I just
call it funny and say like, oh man, like how goofy is it that they did that?
Yeah, but somebody had to write a book.
Yep.
Like somebody wrote that as a book. I don't know, man. I just I don't know. It is. Yeah. Fucking Luke. But anyway,
I'm not going to join you on that particular high ground.
It's all right. You can I will stand alone on that. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's stupid. A lot of things are stupid.
A lot of things are stupid. This seemed like the Luke clones thing was the stupidest thing that I learned in a while. So I like to imagine that Ruus, there was originally just a Russ, and then Ruus like got added through that same kind of naming convention. Ruus Hardy is one of these mercenaries who we play as, and he was raised by Granny at the foot of this tower.
Granny, capital G, so this is a proper noun.
Yes, yeah, it's she's an apple, and you're heading. There's a village at the end of the tower, and he goes to kind of check her out and finds out that the village has been razed and the tower is gone. It's this crumbling ruin that we see in the opening cinematic.
Yes, it's just this base of the tower.
Yes.
And fortunately, the tower's not gone. It's just, where they cut it off at the root, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's. I get the sense because it's inside. It's still like structurally sound.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I get the idea of it just being literally inverted.
But I mean, like you start out the dungeon. Like I get the sense that the first floor of this is the basement. Like the top of it's just gone. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking of it as still you're climbing a tower just in reverse. Like there's nothing to suggest that. It just like in my mind it looked like it just in my head canon. But yeah, it is. We start in the basement. There are many sub basements, and we'll kind of find out a little bit about what this basement was used for. As we move on.
Yeah. So once Ruus goes there, there's an old monk who mistakes him for a great hero. He just kind of like, oh, you must be this elder or something. I forget what it says in the manual. And tells him to venture into the sunken portion of the tower and kill the Dark Lords down there, because only if he releases those people's souls are they, able to be revived, right? And so he gives him a single sword, and then sends him on his way. And this is you, and you're never called by Ruus in the game again.
You're never called by anything again. Right. Like it is just like it's very you get addressed by the bosses, but it's very there's not very much to you. I love how like two things. I love that So one, it's like that's your motivation, right? Like your grandma lived here, or Granny, whoever Granny is, like lived here. So you want to restore her soul. But two, he gives you this magic sword because he says something like, weapons, or it says this in the manual, like weapons from the earthly realm won't work here. Like it's like handing him and be like, this is good for 6 swings. Like
well, no, it's a starter. It's like he knows you're going to burn through it, but once you're down there, you got to kill somebody, take their weapon, then you trade up. It's kind of like that guy who traded a paperclip around the world for a house.
Yeah, it is very similar to that.
Yeah.
I love this magic sword that he imbues you, and it's like it's more or less disposable. Like it's more or less a prop sword.
Yeah. So, and I've already given the dismissive kind of summary of this. So people who are listening, this is going to be a 2-part episode. I'm not sure how long each of these sections is going to be because this game is very resistant to our kind of normal approach. For notes and such. So we're going to be splitting this after the Fire Temple or after the Fire World.
Yes. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so like if you are, if you want to be taken by surprise by anything that happens in Waterworld and beyond, then recognize that.
Yes, it resists our normal approach in multiple ways. The most obvious one being that it's so story light, but also keep in mind what we mentioned about the encounters being random. So like we can't even say like, oh, and then when you go into this room, which like there's not a lot to demarcate that room in the first place. There's those 3 knights that cover each other. Well, maybe not for you, So like we can talk about the enemies you face and kind of how you deal with them, but it doesn't have that kind of thoughtful encounter design that we're used to from the company.
Right.
But yeah, you begin right away on this in the Shadow Tower area, perched on this very narrow walkway, and the door behind you is crumbled closed. Similar to the ancient city, you're messing around with buttons. You're going to strafe off the edge and die before you actually see an enemy.
Yeah, and it's not just like, hey, continue. It's just like new game.
Yeah, new game. Like, okay. But eventually you realize you have to go down. And this is the tower. This is the hub on which the entire game is kind of based around.
Yes.
And there's some areas where you can kind of do some jumping down to, to kind of skip areas and the like, but we're not there yet. We have to go through the human world, which is for all intents and purposes kind of like a tutorial.
Yes. So this
teaches you nothing. It's just a slightly easier area.
Right. It does not hold your hand. In a way, it respects you as a player. Well, disrespecting
in some ways the Shadow Tower itself was a character.
Yep. But yeah, this human world, it's kind of the area that was closest to once serving kind of these human needs, right? It's a B1. It's this kind of like place where people were incarcerated. And this doesn't really have a strong gameplay theme aside from being probably the bleakest green hill zone we've ever covered.
It is like the rotting green hill zone. Like there's some kind of notes, like lore notes we run into later, and like you get the idea that the people who were here were like the guy who did this GameFAQs post was kind of surmising that this was like a cult had taken up residence here, because they take joy in torture. Like this is like a graveyard that turns into torture chambers, and turns into other ways of kind of hurting people. So like It is already a bad scene. Like it is bleak with a capital B. Yeah. So you head down this into the solitary region. Each world is broken up into these regions.
Regions or caverns or such and such. And it's good that there's a title card because I would have no way to distinguish a lot of these.
No, yeah, it's necessary.
Yeah.
So this is a mausoleum.
Yeah. So you walk in and there's like this, there's this church, and you are introduced right away to enemies that will both destroy your equipment and poison you, and also are some of the hardest to target in the game.
Yes. So getting past these guys is really like this is the path. Like this is the real Shadow Tower starts here. 2 steps in. So you kind of get around, and you're kind of introduced to the basic kind of principles of hitting guys or attacking them, which is looking at their hurt box, like how they attack, and just getting on the other side of that if you're able to. And that stays true with these spiders we run into, the dark spiders after this, which move fast and have one of my, like, I love the noise these things make. That's so good because when these things are a real threat, like, and you think you've got them all, but you can still hear one of them chittering
like off in a corner. Yeah.
Like they, I love it. But so these guys kind of dart. Yeah. Like they dart forward, so you want to be able to like have them dart just outside of, you're just outside their range, and then circle around to the side. Yeah. And kill them. The game has another kind of thesis that's laying out right away. Is the first spider you run into will drop a weapon. And that is just saying like weapons are plentiful. Like we are going to just give you weapons at random really frequently. Yeah. which is good.
And they're going to drop with like no durability left. So you need to like take care of these, because guess what? You're not going to see a blacksmith in this entire region. You're going to maybe use some Ashes of Dorado, possibly.
Yes.
But yeah, don't count on that.
Yeah. So you kind of move through these mausoleums. There are these skeletons on the walls and stuff. Bloop. And this is where you can first start having the weird signaling of secret passageways.
Yes, because you hear some rattling on the other side of a wall. And boy, oh boy, are you not equipped to deal with skeletons yet.
In classic Dark Souls fashion. Skeletons are a little bit too much.
Yeah, and like what's behind that is it's a shortcut to the last area of this world. So like you're not ready for what's behind there either.
Yes. Yeah. But you want to pass that skeleton, and you're going to be coming back here, right? Like there's some Metroidvania elements of like going back and getting treasure, but the real reason I went back was like to utilize different shops and services, but also just to clear out easy areas to gain some stats.
Yeah. And, like I said, you have that shortcut, like that works the other way. So you're going to go through this door, this warp, and then come out back in this place that's familiar to you. And I'm always going to love that feeling.
Yes. Feel good about going through warps, feel bad about dropping off ledges. Ledges you have to consider.
Oh, it is a dark vocabulary.
Yes. Yeah. Another game of warps and ledges. That's like the all downhill like Souls equivalent of the board game. You actually have to like you start playing, you get to the ledge at the very beginning, you go down, and then you pull out a second board that shows the underworld of the warps and ledges game.
A 2-layer board game.
Yeah. I'm sure that's been done. It's a super cool idea, though. I was also thinking about like Chutes and Ladders Legacy, where like eventually you bring out the second like board to do the underworld.
Where like ladders have limited uses.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Destroy this ladder forever. Rip up this card.
Yeah.
But eventually you move on after this area. After you get through this graveyard, you go through. There's a new enemy here too. There was for me the bats.
Right. Yeah, they shoot the concentric circles at you.
Yeah, the sonic waves, and these guys are really hard to deal with too. Like at this point, every enemy you're running into is harder to deal with than the last.
Right, and they're pinned to the ceiling too, so now you have to look up. And what is it? The attack does it slow you or does it paralyze you?
It doesn't paralyze. They don't introduce paralysis yet.
Okay.
I thought it just hurt. I thought this one just hurt. There's like a slow effect, which I love is represented by a cartoon 10-ton weight. Because that symbol makes a lot of sense in this world. But yeah, and you can see what they're doing, right? Like they're saying, look down to fight enemies, look up to fight enemies. Right off in the bat. Eventually, once you get through this graveyard, though, you go into the hidden region.
Yes, which is the torture chamber.
Yes.
Yeah, so you see the rack, you see the blood sluice on the floor. It's all there. You even see the corpse on the other side of a cell wall.
Yeah. Yep. And this first save point that you can get to in the entire game is like the end of this.
Yep.
So like you've gone through this whole area with those difficult monsters. You can run past shit, again, in Souls fashion. But again, not recommended because
you're not getting better.
You're not getting better. You're much better off. But there is permadeath. It's not like when you save or anything, you keep your gains. So there's no suicide runs in this game.
Right. We're introduced to the first Kyun merchant here. I like this. And this is the first time where you realize there is voice acting in this game.
Yes.
Some of it's pretty good.
Every time it shows up, it's really weird at the very least.
Yeah.
When we say merchant, like we've been talking about merchants and stuff, we didn't say that the way that you go to merchants is through teleporting through headstones. So it seems like a minor detail to leave out. Like it is. So you just find a gravestone. It has a little gem on it. I can click on it, and then I got teleported to this shop where a Naga tells me I'll stink up the place. It's like what? And the reason being is I didn't have any Cunes at the time. So she only welcomes you there if you have Cunes.
Right.
Or you get, maybe she doesn't say the stink of the place. Maybe she just immediately rejects you.
Oh.
And the screen just fades up and then fades down. And it's like, what the fuck was that? Like, but yeah, you have to have some Cunes to browse.
Yeah. Even if you have Cunes, she's very worried about the stench of you.
Yes. Yeah. You smell like human.
Yes.
Human meat. I love these corpse trees.
Yeah, these casket enemies that it's like a dead tree grew up around a skeleton.
Yeah, these things are great.
And also these tongue imps. Again, we're getting to this is an action pose for a monster manual guy.
Yeah.
Like they're called tongue imps because they walk around using their tongue as a pseudopod.
Yes. Yeah, so just think on that. Like if you just Google image search like Shadow Tower enemies, you'll get a good idea of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
here, which I think is worth it. Like I would love like when you start talking about a Design Works book, like I want to know the stories of this, but I also would love just a monster manual based on this game. Like a gallery, like somebody do an Imgur gallery. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. Boy, oh boy, that would take so much work
It would totally.
to get good. Well, there's no crosshair, so you could take good screenshots on the Vita and then just crop it out.
Yeah.
Huh. I'm not going to do that.
Somebody should even just the bestiary.
Mm-hmm.
Like just screenshots of every bestiary entry. I would love if somebody did that. Yep. I'm not hinting at you, Cole. This is not like me sub-hinting at giving you a job, but
yeah.
I just want somebody to find it already on the internet. But we're the only people in the world talking about this game right now, so I don't think that'll happen.
Right.
Yeah. The sea point is in this room full of hidden passages once you get past the tongue imps.
And like these hidden passages will take you all the way around the level. Including back to that cell that you saw to get a little bit of a surprise. This is a corpse mimic almost. There's a parasite that jumps out of the chest of the body.
I love that thing.
Yep.
Like, because I'm trained to look at bodies, I want their shit, and they have a little description that talks about these parasites that grow up in corpses.
Yeah, and it calls them insectivorous, which I don't think the translator knew that it meant that they eat insects. Like,
yeah, not just hungry bugs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also there is a pit with a fanged worm inside of it.
I love that pit.
Yeah.
Anytime there's like a one-off like little set piece in this game, I'm real into it because it doesn't happen that often.
Right.
And so you go back to that body and you want to because you get scale mail at that point, which is pretty good armor.
Mm-hmm.
And armor seems to degrade slower than weapons for me.
Yeah.
So like it's a safer bet putting on armor right after I find it.
And certain attacks will degrade it faster.
Yes. Yeah. Especially once we get to Waterworld.
Oof.
So this fanged worm, falls down, and that's where the things are just falling from the ceiling as well. Like it's a pit in a room with like meat falling from the ceiling, and you have to go around the pit, which is super cool. And to get to this next place, they're not connected naturally. You have to go through a warp stone, or at least they're not connected this way naturally. Right. Like there might be a one way, another way, but you go to the Forgotten region.
Yes, which is the jail.
Yes, and it's full of cells, and eventually you'll get the key. And kind of can loot them for treasure, but for now they're locked.
Yeah.
The noise it makes when you try to click on a door when it's locked sounds like a fully unlocking noise to me. So
that's just remembering too many scabs. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, it didn't sound like. So I was like, oh, why isn't this open? And it took me a little while to figure out what that noise was supposed to mean.
Yeah. So remember when we said, hey, you need to fear ledges? That's the case here because if you go left, you're going to fall down a ledge. There's no way to get back up this ledge until you get to a warp stone at the very end of the next world. And I'm going to take a guess and say you're not ready to go there just yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Earthworld is comparatively, like, you could get ready, right?
Yep.
Like, if this happens, you're not doomed.
Yeah, you're not here to kill a boss or anything.
Yeah, like you could go through like the beginning areas of Earthworld and probably level up enough and be okay. There's also Homeward Bones in this game. There are these feathers that will teleport you back to your save point.
Yeah.
I think at this point you probably found a couple. I always remember having a few kicking around my inventory.
Yeah, you can so you can buy them too.
Yeah, so if you fell down, you can probably get back. Yeah. It's up to you to because you pick up items on the ground. We didn't really talk about this, and you have to actually look in your inventory to see what they are. Yeah, none of them really visually read.
Right.
As to what they are. So like that's kind of a pain in the dick to just constantly be checking to see what you have.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So one of the more metal types of enemies in this game, the acid skulls, which
I love these things.
Are just like the giant face enemies from the end of Final Fantasy IV. They're skulls that are just covered in goop. And you only encounter, like, the only unit of measurement for these guys is a room full.
Yes. The way and these guys are a wall. They don't want you to get in there yet. Until you can kind of tank a couple of hits getting past them. So it's really fun when you eventually get past them, but at first they're just a meat wall. There's another secret room a little bit further on where you can get this soul pod, and this room is full of skeletons. And at this point, like, again, that like gradual but constant buildup, like you can probably take skeletons now. Like they're hard, but I can fight skeletons at this point.
Yeah. And also this is where I really started relying on luring enemies into hallways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if there were like a bunch of them. And that's a classic. That is a classic tactic. But, I was confident enough now to like, okay, well, I don't just have to avoid them. I can get them into a place where it's advantageous for me.
And that's generally like similar to Souls. Like the thing you're going to want to do when you run into a group of enemies is find a way to engage one of them at a time if you can. You can't pull enemies very well. Like distance weapons tend not to pull enemies. They just tend to destroy them. So there are some tense moments in some rooms later where there are like 3 laser plants covering one another, and you just have to constantly be moving while you're attacking one. But here, at least, these guys will kind of make a beeline towards you.
Yeah.
Who would have guessed? Plants are less mobile. Skeletons. But this is where you first find your bottle of light, which is a pretty rare and cool item that works like a better torch. I don't know if we found torches yet, but torches light everything up and give this kind of nice fire effect on the walls. But a bottle of light actually lights up a whole region for quite a while.
Yeah. So that's just a kind of set it and forget it kind of thing. And I like that idea of just a bottle of light.
Yeah.
That is evocative as hell. At the far end of the level, there is an HP potion trader, and we talked about that in the generalities. It's not terribly useful yet because I didn't want to separate with any of my gear, just at the moment. And also, there's a save point, which we mentioned, not as useful as you would think.
Yeah, they're not bonfires. Right. Like, you should save when you run into them. If you feel comfortable with the progress you've made since the last one. Several points in this game, I did the thing where it's like I would leave a save point, make my way to the next one, and do worse than I want to, and then restart in order to try again and use less resources on the way there, which is a Resident Evil thing. Like, I do that in Resident Evil too.
Yeah. It's funny, when I was playing this, I was thinking about kind of the economics of save games, especially back in the day. You know, I was a little kid when I was playing on the PlayStation, and the idea of dedicating more than one save slot to something, because like, okay, I can play 15 games at once. And that's all that's all I can brook. You know, it was useful for me to have multiple save files on this, so I could kind of like leapfrog them if I needed to, right? Like, oh, if I fuck this up on the move, so I'm going to go back. How weird is it that like when memory was a finite thing, we would work ourselves into those situations just because of like an economic reason? Yeah.
I mean, and now the equivalent. It's like that on a bigger scale with whole games. Like, now it's like if I want to download this game, I have to erase these games from my Vita or what have you, or my 3DS if I want to play.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, that is a weird thing. This game benefits from having unlimited saves for sure. This opens into an area where you can eventually get into the cursed region, the final region of the area.
Yes, that doesn't have a boss, has a mini boss kind of thing. But this is just kind of an unformed cave that is full of not just the spiders that we've seen before, but also these shadow spiders that kind of hang from the ceiling.
Yes, and I always get unnerved when things hang from the ceiling in this game. Like, anytime something's on the ceiling, it's pretty great.
Yeah,
we're introduced to kind of like, I don't know, like our Solaire.
Yeah.
for this game.
He's important enough to be like known by name by the end boss.
His name is Fat Mole, which is not a nickname, and it's also not an unfortunate skin condition.
Right.
It's a name for a chubby mole.
Yes, it is a name. He looks like the mole creatures from Mario World.
Yeah. I love Fat Mole.
Yep.
Like, Fat Mole. If they ever do like a FromSoft fighting, like, Smash Brothers thing, I want Fat Mole to be an assist for when you play as Roos. But yeah, he tells you, humans built this place, but down below it is no longer the realm of humans.
Right. So there are monsters down there. And then he doesn't walk away or like disappear like a lot of the other NPCs do. He rolls into a hole in the wall.
I love it. It's so good.
And it's, like it isn't like a quick roll, like, he's not like Sonic, like take it, and then he's out.
Yeah.
It's like he just they set the rotation to like, okay, 1x and then and then just glides slowly over the floor.
My hole needs me now. This hole was made for me now.
He tweens directly to the hole. It's great.
Yeah, it's really great. Fat Mole is the best. Every time this guy shows up, I freak the fuck out. We also find this corpse with a lore note on the wall.
Yeah,
and there's a couple of them we've run into so far, but they've just been kind of evocative, without having that much specific meaning.
And that's why I didn't take a note. It's like, all souls will burn. Oh, okay, cool.
Well, so, like, some of them are cool, I think, right? Like there's the one where like in the torture chamber, it's like, this is that GameFAQs guy where it's like, was it we who sinned or is it blood of man, which is the crime? It's like, okay, I can get down with that. And comrades who fail on the quest sleep quietly now in your sealed foundation. It's got this kind of like a grandiose kind of meter to it that I like. But this one actually is like a lore note that's specific, where we start learning about these knights that made it kind of a pilgrimage down here. There are 8 of them, and they have this captain named Apollos, who's going to be important.
And the person who wrote this, and we're led to believe that the corpse that we see was the author, is just kind of dismayed that all of them have turned on each other.
Yes. And so we don't know, what that is, whether these were like shit knights or whether it was,
the corrupting force of this place.
Yeah. Or every other day on my calendar. I'm regular, but unhealthily infrequent. But I can't go out. But yeah, we don't know if they are here because of good or evil.
Right.
But we do know that they are becoming corrupted one way or another.
Yes. There's a room far on the east of this, and I only know this from the map. We didn't really allude to this, but use a fucking map.
Yeah, there's if you just Google Shadow Tower maps, there's a really good like GeoCities style like fan site from a really long time ago.
Like an Angel Fire, it's like Kingsfield.com that is just completely broken. I think that it's held up with baling wire and the Wayback Machine. But it's there and it's helpful, and I'll nice.
Put it in the notes. It's actually great.
Yes, it's great. It is super helpful. And even though I got pretty acclimated to navigating the space, it was still nice to know the size and shape of something, and my relative position.
This game 100% should have had a map.
Yeah,
should have shipped with a map. And this is just a theming. This is like a gaming lesson I've learned this winter, because between this and what we're playing for Watch Out for Fireballs right now is that if you're a PlayStation era game, you don't have the ability to make have graphical fidelity to give me adequate
information.
I can't make a mental map of this place when hallways all look the same. You have to give me a fucking map. And then that happens here too.
Or when the very walls will buckle and fold depending on how it decides to render.
Yeah, it is really, really hard to make a mental map of this place.
Yeah.
You can do it, and there are some areas I do feel like I have totally mapped, right? But it wouldn't have hurt anything to have a map. It wouldn't have ruined the immersion or anything. So just use your own, which is nice because you're probably playing this on handheld, and it's easy to do that.
Yeah.
I really weirdly played this sitting at my computer, not on my computer. Using my chair. Yeah.
I play this in bed because I could.
Well, I couldn't look at the maps adequately enough.
I had the maps on my phone when I was taking notes.
Yeah, I mean, I had maps on my phone too. It just didn't look like I wanted bigger maps. I want to be able to read it better. I gotcha. So anyway, the knights turn on each other and Captain Apollos. This far eastern room where you kind of have this mini boss.
Yeah,
with
this is sweet.
This is a really cool. Yeah, this is super cool. It's little because it's this bat skeleton thing that's hanging from an altar. When you arrive.
Yeah,
and you end up ultimately fighting it.
Yeah, it's like a beast. It's like a guy who was halfway through transforming into a bat, but his body fell apart at the spine, and he just wakes up and starts flying at you.
Yeah. Super cool. And it's not officially a boss. This guy doesn't have a name or anything. He's just he's who we fight. So you continue on. When you're ready, you go back to the Forgotten Region, and you can drop off that ledge that we said not to drop off of. To go into Earthworld, which is this is where the game hit its stride for me.
Yeah, me too.
In a kind of a big way. Getting to Earthworld and feeling good about it was a big deal.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's just because it's more colorful, if there's it's where the enemy variety really kicks in. If they're just it introduces enough gameplay wrinkles. This is not the Poison world. Right,
weirdly enough,
yeah, right. We're gonna get to that later. But there's a little bit of that there, and there's a little bit of dealing with AOE attacks, which are going to be used to varying effect throughout the rest of the game.
Yeah, and also other status effects. This is where people do start paralyzing you. More frequently, and this is also where the first repair shop is. So you're introduced to that aspect of the economy.
Oh, to the loop, definitely.
Yeah. So this is where you're clued into what the game is going to be about managing. For sure. You start off in the rotting cavern. You don't have to, which is cool. Usually a lot of times in these worlds, you start off at this kind of a spoke where you can kind of check out 2 different areas, but the rotting cavern is the easier of the 2.
Because the actual geometry is not hostile to you.
Yes. Yeah. It's not poisonous like the geometry in the poisonous cavern.
Yeah. Right inside the door here is your first blacksmith, and we've talked a lot about that, but once I figured out what this did, it was kind of it was like a eureka moment.
Yeah, because you just feel like if I have like 6 weapons in ready, I feel like I can do whatever in this game. I feel like I could take on anything.
Yeah.
Up until this point, I was just continuously like, I was breaking things so they didn't know not to, and just everything was terrifying. Because if you run out, you don't have a melee attack if you run out of weapons. Like that's it for you. And I definitely had a game end with running out of weapon.
Yep.
Which is awful, like really frustrating, and you should probably always have a dagger or something in the game, like that's indestructible. But the getting this blacksmith and being able to power up is really huge.
Yeah. So like you're refreshed. And what's funny is, so you've been leveling up as you've been going through, and it's kind of weird because like the curve of your equipment so far has probably been going down, right? Like you're resorting to weaker and weaker weapons as your character is getting stronger and stronger. And so like you're not seeing a lot of gains, but once you take that breath of fresh air and that curve is back up, like it's an immediate empowering moment. Like now we're cooking with gas.
Yeah, you will be doing way more damage. And then you're also this is the point where I started like I stopped to look and saw how much better my HP was
Yep.
than it was when I started. And that's a huge thing too. Like, oh wow, like that is huge. I didn't go into any menus or anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, this guy's great, and you're going to use him a lot.
Yeah.
I ended up going back to this guy because he was relatively easy to get to.
Yeah. So there's a big chamber here that has another delightful enemy, these watcher plants that look kind of like not vile plumes. What are they? They turn into
boy.
Yeah, I don't know. I forget
other big plant Pokemon.
Yeah, the other big plant Pokemon. No, but these are like big gawky plants that have eyes where a flower would otherwise be, and they shoot lasers. Like somehow the element of plants is not plant, it's laser.
Yeah, and they shoot lasers that like zip across the ground.
Yep.
In a really satisfying way.
They shoot lasers like Metal Gear Rex.
that is a lot what it's like. That's 100% what these things are like. Yeah. Or Cole, can you put a note? Sorry, I need to know the name of that Pokemon. Okay, I got it.
Okay.
All right. I ended up looking it up and it was just freaking me out. So I'm just gonna I'm not gonna edit around that. I'm just gonna come back in with that Pokemon, but I wasn't gonna be able to concentrate until I figured that out.
Sorry.
That's okay. I can't be on the record of not knowing a Pokemon if it's like in the first 150.
Well, I need you to not edit that out because this is a funny derail.
Perhaps I won't. They're Bell Sprouts.
Okay, there we go.
AKA Weeping Bells, AKA Victory Bells.
Which drools just in a very sickly fashion.
They are, all the plant Pokemons are gross. Even the Bulbasaur is pretty nasty. We start thinking about him like laying, like one of his attacks is like sticking seeds and things to drain his life. Like
yeah. There's this woman from Singapore on Etsy who is selling these 3D printed planters that are either Bulbasaur or Oddish shaped.
Oh, that's funny. That's good.
Yeah, and you can get them in different colors. And the only thing that's keeping me from getting one, like the actual thing, like a decent sized one, was like $15, and I'm like, oh, that's good for a planter, but like the shipping is like $16 from Singapore.
Oh, sure.
It's like I don't know if I want to pay like $30 for a planter. So
yeah, that's pretty intense.
Yeah.
But yeah, Brayden brought us a shower head that's a dinosaur's head. And it's not optimal as a shower head because it just kind of like, it doesn't act as a shower head. You just let the water go directly again, just out. It doesn't really, but it's 3D printed, and it's the first time I've handled something that's 3D printed.
It doesn't feel good, does it?
It's real weird.
Yeah.
Like we're not there yet.
But that's the future. You can 3D print a gun, kill your enemies.
That is
like
true.
John Malkovich in The Line of Fire.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's not like I handle my shower head, so it doesn't matter that it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
But it does kind of look and feel unpleasant to the touch, much like John Malkovich in The Line of Fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway.
So yeah, you got these plants and they shoot lasers at you. This is where you're introduced to paralysis, which is a fucking annoying stat.
It's a real bummer, and you don't get enough resources to deal with it.
Yeah.
And the resources you get, you're going to be tempted to use them if you picked one up, but you shouldn't, because you need to save those for bosses.
Right.
Because bosses do paralysis, which is a real bummer and a real messed up.
Yeah, it's a win button for them. You got more of these imps here, and then there's another chamber that's just full of dwarves, but they don't read as dwarves; they read as garden gnomes. Like this is Winklebottom. Yeah,
they're little Davids the gnomes, and they just kind of walk in little aimless circles every once in a while, swinging little axes at you.
Yeah, like the little stone axes that poison you.
They're so cute.
This is my shit axe.
Yep. Yeah, this is my shit axe on my calendar. The eventually you run into one. There's like a NPC one that is a coward and will give you actually a key that you need. Here, which like every once in a while enemies will talk to you.
Yeah, which is great. Again, it catches me by surprise because it's just infrequent enough. Yeah.
Yep.
There are myconids here, which look like they're spitting low-res images of the Dark Souls Mushroom Men, which also I learned come from Kingsfield as well.
Yeah. Mushroom Men are from Standard.
Yeah. And also these star serpents, which I love the design of, just because the star aspect of them is noticeable but superfluous.
Yeah. And they're guarding a frost ring, which is amazing, and you should get it. It's going to help a lot during the fire realm.
Yes.
And the basic spell for the frost ring hits multiple times, and you'll kind of learn something about spells in this, is that multi-hit is better than one big hit. So spells that hit multiple times are really, really desirable.
Yeah.
We're introduced to an NPC here, which is, this is a direct, like, I feel like you could make the argument that this whole thing is very Bloodborne, or where they kind of recycled this idea from. Because we run into Ariel, who is a demon who is trapped in a doll that kind of looks like the demon. Right.
And like very obviously made of like wood and like held together with twine and burlap or something like that. Like, just a very shitty doll.
Yeah. She talks about how she's been sealed away by a demon named Durin, who is in a lump of clay, and ask you to free her by killing Durin. And she can assume her true form. Yes. And I was expecting like a Lautrec thing, but she ends up being a solid bro throughout the whole game.
Right. Except for the point where she says, like, "Are you ready to do battle?"
But then it just doesn't happen.
Right.
I was like, could I have chosen to fight her then? I didn't.
No,
because I was on her side. Like, she's pretty great. But this idea of like having this consciousness transferred to a doll version of yourself, of this lady, like, really, I mean, obviously that's a Bloodborne connection, but I could also see them recycling that idea directly.
Well, they're just such big fans of Gino.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we all love Gino. Not the fact that he's impossible to read. Like, if you look at him, you can't tell what anything is about him.
I love how I could just point you in a direction and get you started. I'm not like playing the Puppet Master thing, but it's just funny.
That's what it sounds like. I didn't think about that until you said it, but now fuck you.
Oh gosh,
such a bear. Dancing bear to be angered.
But anyway. Yeah. But yeah, she gives you kind of this quest. She makes you promise her.
Yeah.
And
you can say yes or no. Like, it's not like it's just a story thing. Like, you get this little yes no thing, and I was like, what's this do? Like, I'm gonna say yes because I want to see what happens, but hopefully this doesn't fuck me over,
Yeah, like, hopefully it doesn't make some later area impossible.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about. Fortunately, it doesn't do that.
Yeah. Also, the other enemy that's kind of big here are these Ents, which are just Ents.
Yep.
They're called elders, but they're Ents.
Yep. So that's the end of this. Like, you're here to get this key, and you can
get the key and start the Ariel quest.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you dip back out and you go into the poisonous cavern. And this is a tricky area because it introduces this idea that I'm not too, like, it's not used a lot, as far as I know, which is vaccinating against certain status effects.
Like, I ended up using, like, I got decent use out of it. So there's three kind of items that are along this line. There's the poison vaccine, the acid vaccine, which I love the idea of becoming immune to acid by drinking something else.
No, you just douse yourself in baking soda.
Yeah.
I was unclear.
It's just a basic trick.
I was unclear. It's not. I haven't seen it used a lot in other games. Here it's used. Gotcha. It's used to great effect very frequently. Yeah.
And there's an elemental one too, but just for fire.
Yes.
Which is kind of has the same kind of thing. But here it's like, and I also wasn't sure whether this was a limited resource or not. So this is a thing where it's like you have to throw away that too good to use thing, because to get through the poison part of the poisonous cavern, you want the vaccine. But I was like, man, does that mean I can't come back? It lasts for a long time, but doesn't last forever.
Right.
And in fact, they're not unique. Like, if you explore, you'll get more.
Yeah.
And I ended up having the right number of poison vaccines. Like, I didn't end up feeling shitty about it.
Yeah. There's an awesome lore note here. Here are the earth's bowels. Born from rotten soil, and to rotten soil we shall return. We are trapped in this world of darkness.
Yes. Who wrote this? Like, one of those little cuties? Like, it's like a laser plant, like, just etched into the wall. like, and turn to his buddy.
Hey, check it out, bowels.
Yeah, check it out. I wrote a tweet.
You made me laugh. So I don't know who wrote it, but it's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Also pretty good are these beak plants.
Yeah, I love these things. These things will slow you,
yes,
significantly, which is a pain in the ass. But you can either shake it off. There's a status effect item, they'll take care of it, but they'll just keep redoing it.
Yeah.
I found that it was I just needed to kind of work through the pain. Like I would be slow and just kind of deal with being slow and keep attacking so I can get rid of the source and then heal.
Yeah. I found it was very it was very unpredictable how much like paralysis or slow would affect my attack speed or my ability to pause and go into a menu. Did you notice that?
Yeah, sometimes like you just jam on the pause button and it would work, and sometimes not.
Yeah.
So we didn't mention this too, and this I don't know why I'm mentioning it now, but one of the things is you can over equip yourself. I guess maybe because I thought the little weight symbol would mean that.
Oh yeah,
so you get slowed and you get this 10-ton weight symbol, and it's like, oh, I'm over equipped. That's why I'm slow. It's not because you're over equipped. So I saw that and I was like, I'm going to go into my equipment guide. Like I thought they just did an equipment or a status effect that lowered my equip burden.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the case.
No, definitely not. The penalty for over equipping is not like a slower move speed or a slower attack speed. It is a poison effect.
Yes. It is you losing health at a steady and significant rate.
Yes. Well, significant if you are significantly over equipped. I would find myself just like willing to soak a very small amount of loss in order to get the gain that I needed.
Yeah. Especially near the end when you're good on health stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, like these hanging undead enemies start showing up, especially in the poison area, which you get to after this Durin, again, the guy who trapped Ariel, taunts you and says, "Hey, follow me," and then locks the door behind him and says, "Ha ha, you got to go through the poison area."
Well, the sucky thing about that is at the end of that door, there are enemies that will attack you from behind the wall.
Yep.
Because that is a bummer that we haven't really discussed. But enemies can hit you through walls. Yeah, exactly. This is kind of where it becomes an issue. But enemies can attack you through walls and will attack you through walls. And that sucks.
Yeah.
It's another way to know they're there, but I much rather have the environmental sound. And later, there's an enemy in this area that can kind of more or less one-shot you, those like ogres.
Yeah.
And that sucks that they can attack you through the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Because I definitely remember dying and not knowing why I died.
Yeah.
That's some bullshit.
Yep. Do not like that. So there, you go through the poison area, and then there's just green slime on the floor, and these guys overhead. And you get to kind of this cool little set piece. There's a knight who is kind of King Samsoning this trap that is coming down on him, and you need to sacrifice a sword to release the trap so he can die. And he talks about how the king is ahead.
And the cool thing about this is that it's whatever sword you happen to be using at the time. So like you have a choice. You can give away a shitty sword, or you can be like me and think you can get it back and give away a sword you like.
You say that's a cool thing.
Well, no, it's a cool detail, I guess. Like it's a bummer.
Like you're saving this person's life, so you don't have time to go and fish for the one. Like
exactly. Or just that it's not trivial. Like you actually make a sacrifice to do this thing, which I like. Something that way, so you can do that, and we'll come back this way later after this guy dies. This is one of the knights that we mentioned before. But this way to get up, so I did not have enough light increasing items and went through this poison passage in dark and missed this ladder up onto the bridges, which is how you unlock the shortcut so you can get into that area.
Yeah, well that's also how you get to where you get the fire ring.
Yeah. So it was a real bummer. There's a really good shield up there too. There's a lot of really great treasure up there, but I was just running through with my head down and couldn't see anything and missed this ladder. So you had to be aware of your surroundings. And I guess just in video games. So I will work on that in the future.
We all have room to improve. It's fine. So beyond this night, there's a way to relatively. I guess that's not optional, though the place we're going to go is optional. But that's another area. Going up that ladder gets you to Durin, and I expected this to be a boss fight, or at least to have this guy put up any kind of fight at all. But really, he just begs for his life as I kill him, and like I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about that. Like
he just kind of walks away from you. Yeah, he's not. I mean, he tricked you, so it's like you have a little bit of that. Like he's the Patches of this game. So you have a little bit of like it's cool to kill this guy, Feels good. But also he just doesn't fight, he's unarmed and he doesn't fight back. At this point, I'm in Big Oriel's pocket, right? Like anything Oriel wants me to do, I'm doing.
Big Oriel.
Like, caca. Like I'm doing it. So, no.
So yeah, you kill him and you get this seal key, and you go and you unlock this crystal casket. And Oriel stands up out of here, and she's an anime demon lady with these big horns, but otherwise a real solid bro, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get the fire ring, which is just useful. Like anything that gives you more range is good. And also you're able to unlock the door that Durian locked before, and you have a shortcut from the beginning of the zone.
Yes, which is super useful. Anytime you can unlock a like Dark Souls-esque shortcut is amazing in this game. So and you can also make your way now to the Quaking Cavern, which is the next cavern we need to go to, which is kind of small. And that's one of the things is like the different regions have a real, different kind of a real variety in size. And then even comes down to the different like full zones. Like there's a world leader that's like really short.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. I like that they break that up.
Yeah. So kind of the trick to this is, there's another kind of plant, but that's not the trick. You have these leeches, and you find the small ones. They look kind of like pink socks floating around, and they've got they'll give you poison. But you walk into this awesome set piece where you go down a long hallway, and then wait, what's at the other end? Oh, there's a mouth that's coming at me. Let me go around this corner. Oh, there's another mouth that's coming at me.
Yeah.
And then you try and turn around. Oh, wait, there's another mouth that's coming at me. It's the adults.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's very similar to 2-2 in Demon Souls.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
When you're going through the tunnel and you just kind of trick these by staying out of their range and backing up and attacking everything. But one of them drops a bow, which is amazingly powerful.
Yes.
There's no limited ammo. You don't have to equip arrows or anything.
It's just durability.
It's just durability, and it is fragile. Like it will drop, but it's so great to be able to attack things at a distance without using really precious spells. That at this point I was saving for tough encounters or bosses that I was sure were going to show up at some point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so getting the bow is great.
This is also the introduction to the pitcher plants, which make cartoon spring sounds.
Yes, when they jump around in little circles. This is where you get to the ogres, and these things suck. I had to come back here later.
Oh yeah,
when I was much stronger, because there's 3 of them in a room, and they can kill you from the next room over through these like giant AOE stomps that there's really nothing to do about. Like they're not very fun to fight, and you can't really get close to them. They're just like an HP tax to kill them.
Yeah.
The room is full of treasure. Like it is a big treasure room, but you're meant to come back here later.
Yeah. Like, and the treasure you get here is mostly Dorito ashes.
Yeah. You get some Dorito dust, and then you also get some other thing as well. Either a ring or a amulet or something like that.
I stopped differentiating between loot.
Yeah, it's weird because nothing has a special effect. Everything is stat based.
Yeah.
That's actually not true. Some of them do have special effects, but nothing says what they are.
Right.
So like I remember looking online and seeing that some of these like amulets actually did some kind of weird things. Not very many of them, but most of them are just like, oh, do I want this kind of magic resistance or this kind of magic resistance? I don't know. I don't know what like a laser counts as. Okay, so I would just end up like equipping whatever increased the stats I knew to care about. So if it increased strength, speed, or balance, I would put it on.
Yeah.
That's really it. So, yeah. But so you make your way through the Quaking Cavern and eventually get to the Stone Cavern.
Yes, and so this is like the mine, right? Like there are mine carts and tracks laying around, and this is explicitly kind of a maze almost.
Yes.
And you're being led. Like there's a little bit of a critical path. You've got this enemy called Dybbuk, which I don't think is supposed to be that demon from Jewish folklore that is supposed to be the ghost of an unborn child. I think. Oh. Like I think that's just it's just a name they chose.
Just take it the name. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just like this little gremlin kind of guy who will run away at different times as you go along. But there's some kind of cool stuff off to the side here. Yeah.
Like he's trying to lead you into areas, and get you surrounded by other enemies more or less, or aggro other things.
Right.
So don't fall for Dybbuk. You can fight these kind of clay golems. Who you run into here, which are pretty cool. And the other big thing to watch out for, it's not an enemy, but there's a ton of ledges here where you can go down to the sub-level.
Yeah.
That's on the same cavern. So be careful when you're doing that here, because none of them are truly one way. You can always find a way to get back, but like sometimes it's a huge pain in the dick.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful. There are these demon bats that hang from the ceiling and cast slow on you. They're just demon bats. They're pretty cool. But I love these Mandaraga things you run into.
Yeah, the
noise they make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're just like little carrot dudes that pop up. That's one of my favorite like little like folklore things.
Yeah.
Actually, just the idea that there's a plant that'll scream when you pull it.
Yeah. And it kills people when you hear the scream, or depending on the legend, like kills or paralyzes or what have you. Yeah, these guys are sons of bitches.
Yeah. Yep, but it's pretty cool. Like, but they're not aggressive. You have to attack them first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you ultimately get to Dybbuk, who makes Donald Duck noises and begs you not to kill him. He screams murder as though that law exists.
Everyone says murder when you try to kill them when they're explicitly antagonistic, and there's no reason to think that this demon is more sentient than the other demon, or like more deserving of my mercy.
Yeah.
But yeah, you kill him, and this one it feels like an optional thing. Like I wonder if something happens if you don't kill him.
Oh, if he comes back later and saves the day, like the dog from Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, like you don't have to kill him, and you get a ring that duplicates another ring that you have. Like you get the caustic ring, which does that basic water spell. I want to say, right? Or is this is the thing
different? Like caustic is a new. It's a new one. Like you don't get a replacement for this until the end of Waterworld.
You're right. Yeah, this shoots acid.
Yeah, it's useful. From a gameplay.
All the spell rings are great.
Yeah.
Like you need all of them. All of them you can get. If you actually fall down to the other level, you can get to this other area, this false pit cavern.
Yes.
Which has different areas that you can go to through it. You can either get back to the Shadow Tower, so you can continue down to the Fire World, or you can keep exploring, or you can go back to the human world.
Yeah, so you can take a warp back to the jail cells.
Yes.
And then like that is a super short run to get back there. I ended up doing that to just get some more kills under my belt.
Yep.
But here in this main hallway that we found, this kind of looks like a Shulva a little bit. In a way, at least in coloration. You're introduced kind of your first knight type enemy, this Earth Knight, who just really, really puts up a hell of a fight because he's really mobile and really aggressive in a way that other enemies have not been so far. Like he is on the pursuit pretty much all the time.
And you can the way there's a couple enemies that have this kind of basic movement thing, and like the trick to these, which again super soulsy, is to find their off, like whatever side they don't favor, and circle around that side.
Yeah.
So like usually they'll miss and you can get kind of a counterattack in. And so ultimately I eventually figured out how to deal with these guys, but it took several tries.
Yeah.
There are more pitcher plants here.
in these winding passageways. And you're just going to turn a corner and run into some of these and get poisoned.
Yeah. So. They're the little ambushes.
Yeah.
But there ends up being a place where you can plug in this blue crystal that you picked up and it lights up the region, which is really nice.
Yeah.
And you can kind of continue down to this other area that is full of Ents and or not Ents.
Guardians. It's like more of them.
Yeah. And then the more pitcher plants before on your way to the hostile rock cavern.
Yes. And so this is the boss stage, right? This is your 2-3. Because you walk in and there is the circular chamber that is full of these Earth Knights, and there's some minor treasure on the side. You want to deal with these guys, preferably without using your spells, because they will follow you into the main room to fight Apollos.
Yes, and
Gary, you didn't put in the pause there. We need to put in the music.
I did. Yeah. Oh, just put in like 2 minutes of ambient silence. These guys, this was really hard for me because I had to kill these two guys, but I could, the same thing that you said. Ultimately, I ended up using spells on these guys because I couldn't fight two of them at once without using spells, and then ended up doing melee for Apollos, which this is one of the bosses that's viable. Like, it's not always viable to use melee attacks on a boss. You can fight Apollos with melee.
This is the only boss that doesn't just spam AoE to keep you beyond arm's length.
It's not the only, but it's one of few. Yeah. This guy this is like a fight. And I actually really like this fight. He can paralyze you, which is a bummer, but when he's not doing that, he is just like a very aggressive enemy that has a long range. And to me, he looks like so he's the Dread Knight is his title, and to me, he looks like a Resident Evil boss. Yeah,
definitely. It's weird because he has the Tyrant arm. There's an awesome design kind of thing. He's impaled. And it doesn't look like a regular weapon. Like, it looks like it's a piece of statuary or something. And like it's this came before Code Veronica, but his stretchy Tyrant arm is exactly how the Bandersnatches attack you in Code Veronica.
Yeah. And those things that hits That's the huge damage
Yeah.
from the stretchy arm. That's the most damaging thing he can do to you other than paralyze you and just wail on you. This is where I was using my paralysis cures.
Yeah.
You just kind of circle around him and hit him, but he just moves around in a really erratic pattern. But I ended up like really liking this fight. And it's in a cool little set piece in this like little throne room.
Yeah. Which other bosses don't AoE? Because when I was making the notes, like all of them do.
They don't all just spam AoE.
Yeah, well, there's one that's there's one that's
illusion
particularly
lady.
worse than that. She keeps you away too.
She didn't do it for me. She didn't ever spammed AoE for me. Like she did it every once in a while, but it was not to me. Like the fire boss and the mage, the necro boss or whatever, the evil world boss.
Yeah.
Or the skeleton world boss are the two that I had that problem with. Everyone else like more or less would chill on that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then also water boss, which is meant to be a ranged combat battle. Like he keeps you away, but also it's because you're supposed to be doing a shootout with him. It's like the revolver ocelot fight.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure because you corrected me with certainty. I was like, did I remember that wrong? But all of them did. Yeah.
Their attacks are like they all have them, but there's ones that just do that.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And then there are ones that like they've got some kind of algorithm that decides what they do and when.
Yeah.
So with your difficulty with these enemies is going to depend a lot on that RNG, right?
Yeah, like whether it does that. Like it was always a factor in mine, and like this was the last one that I really felt good getting toe to toe with.
Yeah, it is. I felt better with a couple other ones later, but this guy doesn't do that. But even down to that, like the RNG determining how often he does paralysis is going to determine whether you have a good time with him too.
Yeah.
Right. Like if he's constantly paralyzing you more than you have cures, like that's kind of it for you. So there's like an element of inelegant RNG to the way these bosses work, for sure. After you beat him, he gives you this little speech, which is super cool. I don't think anyone's ripped any of this stuff to YouTube, so I'm probably not going to put it in the episode. I'm not going to find my save game and then put a microphone up to my Vita. But that's where we learn that he is Apollos, one of the 7 great knights of King Edward.
Yes.
And they came for the crown, but they betrayed him and left him for dead. I was turned to darkness and captured by the will of King Edward, but you have freed me.
Yes. So he is the Artorias figure.
Yes. And that's where you get the silent sword, right?
I think so, yeah.
And the silent sword is cool because it has great stats, but you can't use magic while it's equipped. So it's this cool trade-off.
Yeah.
And that's one of those weird little effects that you don't, it doesn't actually say is on there.
Yeah. I think I probably equipped that, and I figured there was something else that wasn't communicated that was keeping me. Yeah. But they are very kind by putting a warp back to the False Pit Cavern so you can get to the Shadow Tower and go to Fire World.
Yes. Yep. And Fire World's my least favorite. I know you didn't have as much of a hard time. Like we talked about this a little bit. But this is my least favorite world in the game. And I got really frustrated about this.
Yep.
So yeah, we'll chat as to why, possibly.
Yeah.
Right now.
And we're back.
And we're back. Let's take a call. We'll be right back.
Go ahead, caller. So yeah, this area is about like massive damage, aggressive enemies, and traps. Like this is going to test your longevity in a way that is more direct than other ways that it is like try to test your longevity so far or will continue to do afterwards.
The frustrating thing about it to me was that there just aren't enough opportunities to repair your shit. So like it's like is there even a smithy? I think there's like one smithy, but then once you get further in, it's really a pain in the ass to go back to them.
No, it's kind of funny because like there's the one area that's not connected, and then you have to the only way to get to the smithy is to run all the way to the final boss area, and then warp back to the second area, and then it's like a bit of a loop. You can
open up that shortcut.
Yeah,
that goes to the smithy, but you don't get to that shortcut until you get to the end. So like you're doing this whole area, which is really, really tough, without having access to like the equivalent of a bonfire.
Right.
And it's a real, like, I just found that to be a bummer. And the boss is full of bullshit.
Yeah.
He is made of bullshit. And the run up to the boss is one of my least favorite run ups, and like from FromSoft.
Yeah.
Once you actually have to start doing it, like you eventually get an item that bypasses it. But you start off in this Phoenix Cavern, which is shaped like a basketball court.
Yeah.
Kind of. It's like this big rectangular U-shaped thing with this river of lava in between. And the whole idea here is you kind of go through fighting these fire djinns and fire knights in order to kind of get to the levers you can switch to drop these bridges and make your way to the other end of this U and then out the other side.
Right. And that's all there is to it. Like there are some items and stuff, but you've got these djinn enemies and they behave just like other knights do, except they float slightly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then there are also enemies that have a fireball shooting attack that they position on the other side of the river sometimes, which is a pain in the dick.
Yeah.
They drop these fire world stones, which are the equivalent of like a fire vaccine. And this might be where you get your first piece of fire armor.
Yeah, there's like they scatter these throughout.
It's very similar to Final Fantasy IV. How like you're in Rubicant's cave and you start finding fire armor, fire resistant armor as you go. Like it reminds me of that curve. Like by the end you'll have a full set, but then you're on to the ice section and don't need it so much.
Well, what's funny too is like that is really valuable, like that effect, and because of how scarce repairs are, like you have to decide whether or not you want to soak that durability. By going for it with it.
Yeah, for sure. But after this very short area, you can make your way into the Burning Cavern. And this is the kind of main room.
Yes.
Or main floor.
Yeah. So this is kind of like a puzzle box room almost, or puzzle box area. It is full of these kind of flame traps, these flame spouts out of the floor, and then these kind of flame fences or barriers. And this is a noticeable uptick in the just the difficulty of the enemies that you have to deal with. Not only just the number of these Mystic Tower kind of enemies that you have to fight that shoot lasers at you, but these berserkers. Like, they baffled me up until I was just done with this area. Like, I never...
No, thanks.
They look cool. Like, they're these, flame robots that'll, like, steamroll you. But they have these AoEs that they just do to destroy your equipment. They might as well have, like, scraping spears attached.
And like the only thing that eventually, like when you have to kill one, when you can't run past it, and like in retrospect, that's why I had such a hard time with this area, is because some of the initial enemies and enemies in that end game I didn't fight. Because I hadn't fought everything on my way here. I'd fought most of the things, but I never like farmed. And then I got here and we're skipping things because they were just too hard. And these things, like, I don't have access to a goddamn smithy, man. Like, don't do this shit to me. The trick to them, which I eventually figured out, is to bait them into doing their like ranged attack, and then they have like a little bit of a cooldown in which they won't do the AoE after it. So like you dodge the range. If you can dodge the range attack, get in one hit and then get away before they can do it.
Yeah.
But it just takes forever. They have a lot of hit points. And at this point, like I'm low on spells. I've been using a lot of spells. There's not like, they don't put like a repair center right after bosses either. So like,
no.
Everything, all that durability I'd taken from the boss is no longer, I don't have that anymore.
Yeah. You have the ability to like, warp back to human world and then go through and repair. Like that is an option that is afforded to you, but it's kind of too little too late to an extent.
You just need to do it. Like I need to want to feel like doing that much walking, and like you can do some stuff with the feather, you can do some homeward bone shit. And that would have been the smart thing to do, is like save here and then warp back and do my stuff and then warp back to the save.
Yeah.
But I didn't kind of figure out that trick until a little bit later.
Yeah. But yeah, so they're kind of like managing where you can go in this, and these narrow hallways do not help you out with these berserkers. The other enemies are not that big of a deal. Like you have these iron crushers that make like stereotypical sci-fi robot noises, like beep, beep, burp.
I don't know why there are robots here. It's such a weird choice.
Well, it's industrial. It's like sacrifice. Fire is industry. Progress.
Oh, okay. In that case, I like it. It's like sacrifice.
Yeah.
That's all you had to say.
I'm not justifying it.
I know. I'm just teasing about sacrifice. So eventually you get past all these these three berserkers, or there are three for me. It could be for many. It can vary, to shut off the traps in this room, which allow you to, there no longer be fire shooting from the walls, which is great. And there's also a hidden door there that you can get into now that the fire is not there, which is useful. You get some ring or something behind that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the way to get it further into this is through a gateway, right? So you walk through the Stargate into the Molten Cavern, where it's starting to look a little bit more demon ruins-y.
Yes. Yeah.
The fat mole warns you about this cranky demon named Abraxas, who turns out to be a red dragon that you cannot damage because he is in his element.
I really wanted Abraxas to be the boss of this and have it be a puzzle boss.
Oh yeah,
that's what he's like, a puzzle mid boss.
Yeah, like you can't attack him directly; you have to use the environment against him.
Yes, and which I liked, but then you end up actually fighting a boss at the end, which is a bummer. So you need to get past more berserkers and these Arachnises ladies, who I actually ended up liking the Quelags you fight. Here, they're just Quelags, and they're hard because you fight multiple ones at a time, but you have to really stay moving so they can't lock on. Other ones can't lock onto you while you're circle strafing. ones. A good place to use spells if you've got any left.
Yeah, and these and these chambers are also they're run through with lava as well. So like circle strafing is easier said than done.
Lava is not instant death in this game. If you have a firestone going on, you can cross the lava pretty easily, actually. Which I think you need to in order to shut off the lava.
Right.
Yeah. Eventually, it will turn off in this room. It takes a few minutes. Or you can leave and come back, and then you can cross safely, or you can just cross and take a couple $100. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's appropriate. Take a couple $100 worth of damage, and get some more good items. But yeah, eventually you can make it into Abraxas's room, where he is now frozen.
Well, what's great about it is like it doesn't just shut off when you're here. You turn a valve, like you shut off his water supply. You shut off his lava supply, and he is trapped inside the suddenly solid lava, and he just dies in one hit and falls apart. He shatters into a pile of Doritos.
Yeah, he's been frozen into Doritos.
He turns into Dorito dust. Yeah,
Doritos ice, Cooler Ranch.
I'm just picturing a Dorito slushie, and you made me very sad.
That's pretty gross. But there's these these enemies from Doom, these skull monsters that are a real pain in the dick. To fight here.
I never quite got used to fighting flying enemies in this.
Definitely not these things. They move too quick. But you can go around and pick up the treasure here before you go into a warp into the final area of this game, the Ashen Cavern, this area, which I think is way too hard. The Ashen Cavern is too much. Like this is what did it for me, because it's all these floating platforms full of just like the trickiest fucking enemies. Yeah,
these Cerberuses and these zygote things. Couldn't they have distributed these just a little bit more?
It felt like this area needed another zone that could have had some of this cast off into it, because it's a pretty small area comparatively. You just spend a lot of time here because it's so tough.
And there's a fucking instant death thing here too.
There's a trap, with no real clue about it. So you're in this whole area is this void with these floating rock islands with bridges between them. And you think you can make a beeline to the boss. Like if you go there, you can't see the boss or anything, but if you just arbitrarily choose to go right instead of straight, you end up on a bridge that gets destroyed by rocks and you die. And there's no hinting or anything that I can tell. Like people are throwing rocks at you, so you see rocks coming, but why don't they throw them at the other bridge? There's nothing to indicate that this is a trap, and it's a real bummer. Luckily there's a save point that you could have hit like right on the way. That's really close to Abraxas. So like, it's hard not to, it's easy to not have that mistake be a big deal.
Right.
But even fighting things once you get further into this is really tough. And you have to.
You definitely do, because you need to you're looking for basically your contact lens on the floor, because you need a certain key off of the ground in order to progress.
To open up this crystal. The key off the ground, the thing you get it drops from a Cerberus. Like you have to fight the Cerberus.
Oh wow! I think I probably killed him. It dropped on the ground, and then I didn't see it, and then I caught it on the way back.
And they put the Cerberuses right next to these like ruby demons.
I love the design of these things.
Those they're great, but they're really hard to fight just those. So this eventually, once I went back to the Earth world and the human world and grinded up and could actually take on this area, I just ended up spending a bunch of spells here. Then having to so you eventually can get this shortcut to go and open up that blacksmith.
The smith and the molten or in the burning cavern.
Super necessary. So I just end up using all my spells and using all my equipment to fight these guys, going to the smith, making another run, killing more guys, going to the smith, and then doing the boss. Who is the Ebony Knight, who the way you get to him is kind of interesting, because you don't walk to his platform, you just activate this key in your inventory. And you can do it from anywhere in this realm, or in this cavern, which is kind of cool. But you use it and you fight him, and this fight drove me fucking bonkers. I died against this guy a bunch.
So this is crazy. I beat him in one life.
That's crazy to me. I mean, it depends on how much you how leveled up you were, I guess.
Also, I was completely decked out in fire, and I countered his AOE with a shield.
Which I mean, I tried to do too. I think that what ended up happening was I just ended up having the durability on my spell weapons to attack him from a distance. And he's on this floating platform. It's easy to fall off the edge of this platform as well. Wow. When you're fighting him, I don't know, man. He's just it's a really unimaginative fight. He's just a skeleton knight that just does AOE fire constantly.
Right. He's incredibly one note.
Like this guy sucks. I don't like this boss fight at all. And in a way, I was thinking like, okay, this is the challenge curve. Like Human Realm was easy, Earth Realm was a little bit harder. Now they've ramped it up to 11, and that's just going to be how the game is. And I was dreading playing it the way that I'm dreading playing Soul Reaver now. Like I was like, oh, this is not going to be good. But then the game just like gets better after this. I feel like,
Yeah.
Because I like there's nothing I dislike as much as the Ashen Cavern in this game. So
Yeah. Like my only problem with this is that it was uninteresting. Aside from just, I like the visual design of these enemies, but I can look at them in the bestiary.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't have to be like right up close to them to appreciate that side of it. Like I wasn't introduced to them. I really don't like any time where they just throw a bunch of different kinds of enemies at me on a platform, and that happens.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to happen a lot in the next episode. Like I would rather them just kind of like, hey, I'm going to introduce you to this enemy in a situation that is something besides an arena where you can't see them most of the time.
Yeah, lets you learn it and then move on. Yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah. But yeah,
I thought this guy. So you're are you a Gary or are you a Cole? Take our online.
Well,
online quiz.
it's entirely up to chance too, and you know, it just depends. Yeah. Like, you know, is this egregious and unforgivable, or just uninteresting and not a problem?
Yeah, and a lot of that is going to have to do with his AI. You know, the RNG thing, because like the later bosses that just, like I said, like Illusion World boss did not do the AOE for me. Like it was just a sword fight or like a close-up fight, which was cool.
Yeah.
So like that stuff is going to vary. But this guy for me just did tons of damage, and even with a Firestone, I think I maybe had to go grind for Firestones. Maybe that's what happened. Something happened where like I just wasn't spec'd for it, and was just like, this is the worst. So it's the lowest point that we're ending this episode on for me.
Yeah. Yep. For me, it's just business as usual.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, this is the end of the first episode. Next week, we're going to be covering Waterworld up through the very end of the game.
Up through the postman.
Yeah. Yeah. You've been waiting for a while to do that one, haven't you?
No, it's just off the dome, man. So we're going to handle that. If you, it is too late.
Yes.
If you have thoughts about Shadow Tower, we're recording these in one go. Just because it is, because it conveniences us.
Yeah.
So,
But if you have any thoughts on Titan Souls or Shadow Tower Abyss, both of those are going to have proper appendices.
Yes, indeed. If you like this and want to support the show, you can support us at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Give us a little bit of money each month, and you can get the episodes a day in advance. Get a bunch of other little perks.
Yeah, that's a bit of a change. You're gonna get them as soon as they're ready. Like not just a day in advance. Like sometimes it'll change, but it'll always be at least a day before they're out because of the way our schedules work. But like
at least a day, sometimes two.
Yep.
Yeah. Because it's never going to be like, because we record, After Sufferings like 3 at a time. You're never going to get.
Yeah. You're not going to get all 4 of those at a time.
Yeah. You're going to get a day or 2 in advance.
Yep.
What else?
What else? We have the Facebook page, facebook.com/bonfireside chat, especially in the run up to Dark Souls 3. There's going to be a lot of interest around the series, when that game comes out. But like, if you are trying to get friends on board with this series and with From Software's work, send them our way. Like make recommendations, blog us, share us, tweet us. We watch for all of that, and we're super gratified when it happens. And boy, that is a great way to help grow the show.
Yes. Yeah, it is one of the biggest things you can do to support the show is just use your voice.
Yeah.
Digitally or in meat space.
Yeah, shout it from the mountaintops until they take you away.
Yeah. And and all the other things like ratings, reviews, iTunes, all that stuff is useful.
Yeah.
So until next time, Cole, what should they do?
They should watch out for Molten Knight.
Indeed.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon